to apologize for the technical difficulties that have been happening on those of wrestling. But yeah, we wanted to give you a little taste, a little preview with this myth and this legend of Farat. Basically, he has been around the Indies, in the Indies. He's been on the circ, on the company when it comes to wrestling as a whole, as an entirety. He has worked with legends likes the likes of Gene Onkland, the likes of uh, Rick Rude, the likes of many legends, the Iron Sheik, and many more. So like this is amazing to have this special guest. We did have a couple of questions by Matthew, and we want to make sure that we go over and take over those questions um, as as it is as itself. Um, so, guys, we're gonna enjoy it. But yeah, so I do want to apologize, Alfred, for the technical difficulties earlier today. We gave a
No
little
worries.
taste. We gave a little taste on Facebook of the interview with yourself. That way, they are able to enjoy, and if they wanted more, they able to watch the full interview with yourself on YouTube for them to subscribe and follow us on Twitch. But yeah, where were we? Um, we were talking about that you were wearing towels representing basically that you were the Iron Sheik. You were very into the wrestling as a whole, like actually became part of your life, and you wanted
Yeah.
to know more. And back then, did not have any social medias, nothing like that. So you had magazines, and you were surrounded with magazines among thousands of them, which you were appearing later on in years to come. So a prediction to it. So how does it feel to become to that transition from a fan to a wrestler? The pace do that you had to go through.
Well, like I was saying, when I found out that my mom's cousin, a relative, was a wrestler, I did my research, found out who he was. Like I said, Bobby Bullbeagle and Black Tiger. Turns out he had a school. He had a school in Brooklyn, New York, on Front Street at Gleason's Gym. Well, actually, his first school was in the Bronx, St. Mary's
Mm.
Park. It was on the second floor of the kind of like their recreational center.
Right.
That's actually where I started training with my cousin, and he started training me, and then he moved to Front Street, Gleason's Gym, but he was sharing the gym with the legendary Johnny Rods, the unpredictable one. And Johnny would have his school, for example, on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then my cousin would have it Tuesdays and Thursdays. But they weren't really friends. They didn't really get along. There was a lot of friction there. So my cousin would always threaten all of us, including me, particularly me. Don't go to his school. I don't want to catch you over there, because he, of course, they had heat with one another. So,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, by that point, when he moved to the school there, I was already wrestling. I was already, I was fully trained. As a matter of fact, before he moved there, two of my students that I introduced to the business were the headhunters.
Oh wow.
Uh, they're the famous. They look like Abdullah the Butcher. They're twins. Their real name is Manuel and Victor. I broke them into the business because I used to work with Manuel at a Roy Rogers restaurant when I was a teenager, flipping burgers. And I wasn't even interested in him. He would always talk to me about wrestling, but I was trying to get this other guy that was another one of my coworkers that was legit 7 foot tall, but he didn't like wrestling at all. But every day I would talk to this 7 foot guy about you ought to become a wrestler. My cousin has a school, but he was never interested. And one day Manuel comes up to me and I keep hearing you talk about wrestling, man. You a wrestler? So I told him, and I want to be a wrestler. Finally, I said, well, come to the school on such and such a date. You know, well, I don't have a way to get that. So well, come to my house and I'll take you. So
Mm-hmm.
he shows up at my house Well, it wasn't my house. I was staying with my aunt in Brooklyn, and I'll never forget the Marcy Projects in Brooklyn, and all of a sudden I get a knock on the door, and it's Manuel from the job. He was serious. He showed up with a duffel bag. He's ready to go, you know.
Wow.
And he said, "Oh, by the way, my brother wants to be a wrestler too." So I was like, "Okay, well, you know, bring him." So right behind Manuel, a few minutes later, comes this guy that's just as big as Manuel, but he was a white guy. He wasn't dark skinned. And I said, "Oh, okay, this is your brother." No, no, no. He's just a friend of mine. He's just coming to look on.
Oh my
My
God.
brother will be at the school because he had to work late. And all of a sudden, we get to the school, and his brother shows up, and they're identical twins. And I remember thinking, man, you guys are money, because they were real big. They had bald head, black. You know, I said, you guys are going to be like the twin Abdullah, the sons of the twin sons of Abdullah the Butcher. So I named them Mofat and Mahim. I gave them that name, Mofat and Mahim, the African headhunters. And they actually used Mofat and Mahim when they debuted in ECW. If you look at some of the videos, you're going to hear Mofat and Mahim. I came up with that. Of course, they later on dropped Mofat and Mahim, and they dropped the African part, and they just put the Headhunters. Headhunters A
Okay.
and B, or 1 and 2. They went to Japan. They were even in SummerSlam. Oh no, Royal Rumble 1992. I think they were in that. Anyway, so they became real big in Mexico, and so that's how I trained. But what happened was, remember I told you my cousin didn't want me hanging out with Johnny Rods.
Right, right.
Well, dude, I was bit by the bug. I wanted to get as much training. I wanted to make as much of a name for myself as possible. So guess what I did? I started going to Johnny Rod's school. Well, Johnny, when he found out that who my cousin was, he tried to stretch me, man. He didn't want me. They were like trying to make an example out of me, but I hung in there. I got in the ring with him, and he had me in the ring for like 30 minutes straight, just bumping me, and I would not quit. Well, long story short, Johnny started booking me on his shows. My
Oh
co-
man.
yeah, and me and my cousin had a falling out, and I didn't. And my cousin had already taken me to Europe, to Guatemala. He'd taken me. I got all the magazines. We were Al and Bobby, or Bobby and Al Bold Eagle, supposedly cousins, but really he was my uncle. Anyway, so he didn't like that very much, and I kind of had a falling out with him. But hey, I was trying to get my foot in the door, you know. And turns out I was training with Little Guido, who was called Damian Stone at the time. I was training with Big Vito, the one who wore a dress in WWE, the
Yep.
bald-headed guy.
Yep.
He was Skull Von Crust. Matter of fact, we rode together to the school. I rode to shows. I picked him up at his house many times. Uh, I was training with Bubba Ray Dudley, who at the time was Mongo Vile.
Oh wow, way back.
Yeah, dude, dude, I got stories. Big Sal Graciano, he was there. He was in ECW as one of the full-blooded Italians. He's a real big guy that Little Guido would get on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
That guy. And guys like Damien Demento, who was called Mondo Clean, he had just graduated. Bill DeMott, he was one of the helping Johnny train the guys. Tommy Dreamer was one of the guys I trained with. Taz, all those guys, we all came from the same school. Well, they were Johnny guys. I wasn't really a Johnny guy, but I became a Johnny guy later on, because Johnny paired me up with one of his trainees called Adolfo Bermudez, who
Okay.
later on became dances with Dudley. He was one of the Indian Dudley boys in ECW way back, if you go way back. He paired me and him together, and we were the Sioux War Party. We actually went to IWCCW together, Mario Savoldi's company. And when we went to IWCCW together, he was a Johnny guy, and I was kind of sort of a Johnny guy. We became the Sioux War Party, the longest reigning IWCCW tag team champions. I was doing the Indian gimmick still. So when I got to IWCW, all the ECW originals were there. This is before ECW.
That's amazing.
You know, you had Taz, you had Tommy Dreamer, you had all the Johnny's guys were there, pretty much, you know. And that's kind of how I got into it. Al Farat didn't come till years later.
Right. Um, by you, I know that you have wrestled at Puerto Rico. How hard was it to be a wrestler to Puerto Rico? Because I know there was a thing that back then there was the jobbers. How hard it was for you to like to pay your dues, yet they want you to be stuck in, or you felt that you were stuck, that you were held down, but you want to succeed in life and grow up. Can you speak more about that?
Let me tell you, the situation with me was kind of unusual because you have to understand when I broke into business in 1987, that was the tail end of the territory era, the territory
Yes.
days. There were still territories. This is before Vince bought everything up. He was starting to buy everything up, but it was still the tail end of the territory era. So the territory era mentality was still in a lot of these promoters' minds. So especially in Puerto Rico, it was he they ran it like pretty much like WWF at the time, where there
Mm-hmm.
were jobbers. You remember in the set? Well, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you remember. You're probably too young, but in the '70s there were jobbers, famous
Mm-hmm.
jobbers. Steve King, Frankie Williams, both
Yes.
Puerto Rican, as a matter of fact. Um, well, that was the same way. You know, when I went to Puerto Rico, because see, when I first started doing outlaw shows before I was trained, it was in Puerto Rico. 1984, 1985. That's how far back. Me and my dad would collect cans because we were poor, you know. So my dad would tell me, "Well, let's go collect cans," because in Puerto Rico that was a big thing to
Yes,
collect
yes.
cans,
I've been through that.
and
Yeah.
you would collect them, and then we would go sell them. And with that, he would buy me, for example, when we made the first $200-300, we would buy a few turnbuckles, tensores, you know, the one that goes
Mm-hmm.
on the corner. Slowly but gradually, my dad built me a ring because we found this guy who had 4 wrestling ring posts in the bottom of his house, rotting away. They were getting all rusty, and he had an old wrestling company. His name was Pitin. So, oh, Piti. So my dad bought these for him. I don't know from him. I don't know how much for, but slowly but gradually, my dad would go with me. That's why I love my dad to death. He's the best father. He's still alive. And believe it or not, 80 years old.
Amazing.
He would go with me. He'd take me everywhere. You know, we were poor, man. We didn't have gas money. I don't know how he took me all over the island. Doing these underground outlaw shows. I wasn't even fully trained.
All right. That's amazing, though. He will be right back. But wow. Hold on. He's right here. There we go. There we go. We got you, boss man.
Are you there?
Yep, yep, definitely.
Yeah, we wasn't even. I wasn't even fully trained, and we were doing these underground shows, these outlaw shows in the backyard, and there's these little places in Puerto Rico called centros comunales,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we would run shows in el Centro Comunal del Tuque, Centro Comunal de Peñuela. You know, they weren't actually centro comunales of towns; they were centro comunales of little, you know, like barrios.
Right.
So anyway, so then that's when I went to New York and had formal training when I would, because I would visit my family every summer. My mom would send me. I convinced her.
Ooh, ooh, something happened. I do apologize, guys. There we go. He's back. He's back. There we go.
I had discovered that my cousin was, you know, a trainer. So then that's when I went to New York every summer and started training. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of how it started. But when I went back to Puerto Rico fully trained, my buddies got me into WWC, which at the time was called Capitol Sports Promotions.
Hmm.
Uh, we're talking 87, man. I was 17 years old. I don't even know how they let me wrestle because I was a minor, you know. But I had already wrestled in New York. My first match was against a guy named Nikolai Volkov.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, I had wrestled in New York for several companies, Manny Siaka Promotions, Club Deportivo de Puerto Rico. Anyway, so when I went to WWC, I was already a wrestler, but so they start. I go into the locker room, and I'm still real skinny. I had just started, you know. I go into the locker room, and the booker at the time was a guy named Jose Huertas Gonzalez. aka El Invader Número Uno. And I'll never forget this because when I was in Puerto Rico, I had already been there putting up the ring. This is before I was trained. Yo me colaba. I would go in the back of the coliseos with all the rest of the guys, and they would get these teenage boys to come in and help put the ring up. And I would try to do, in Puerto Rico, they call it haciendo mandado. I would go, get somebody coffee or get somebody a
Mm-hmm.
drink or whatever. So one day I got real close to a guy named Victor Quiñones, who later on formed La IWA. Victor Quiñones was the godson of Gorilla Monsoon, and he was one of the investors of Capital Sports Promotions at the time. Well, I didn't know, and nothing wrong with that. We live in a open society now. There's absolutely
Yes.
nothing wrong with being gay if that's your preference. But it turned out later on I found out he was gay and he was actually hitting on me and stuff. But I used that to my advantage because he really took a liking to me. But then it got kind of weird, and so I
Mm-hmm.
cut ties with him. But he would send me to the truck to go get this, or he would send me to the ferreteria to go get this before the show. So one day he tells me, "Mira, llévale estos boletos. Take these tickets to Jose." Or no, I'm sorry. Dile a Jose que me dé los boletos is what he was saying, because Jose was part of the office. So this was in the Coliseum called Coliseo Pachín Vicens de Ponce. I'm trying to give you all these stories to give you an idea of how I broke into WWC. So I go over there and I knock on the. I wasn't trained yet. I was just putting up the ring, and Jose opens the door, and I say, "Mira, Victor Quiñones needs the tickets for the front door. He's waiting up front." And I kid you not, true story. I told Jose this later on. Jose looks me dead in the eye. Un chamaquito de 15, 16 años. I was 15, 16 years old. He goes,
Wow.
"Ah, tú eres mensajero." And I'm like, "No, I'm just, tú sabes lo que dicen de los mensajeros." And I didn't know what that was, what he was saying, que
Right.
los mensajeros eran pato. And I'm like, well, that's kind of shitty to say to a little kid,
Right.
but okay. So he really like uh, intimidated me. So I went back and told Victor what he said, and Victor goes over there, and they start getting into an argument. They had always had friction because Jose was a hard man. He's an odd cat, man. Okay, now fast forward. Now I'm fully trained, and I get introduced to Jose Puertas Gonzalez, who's the booker at the time. And he looks at me like this, de arriba abajo, from head to toe. And he goes, "Tú eres luchador?" I said, "Yeah, such and such, me and Lázaro Salazar." That was the name of my buddy who I trained with in Puerto Rico when we were having shows and en las parcelas, backyards. So anyway, he goes, "Okay." Of course, I knew automatically I was going to do jobs. I was going to be like Domingo Robles and Isaac Rosario and all these other guys. So he tells me, ¿cuál es el nombre que tú usas? Now, at the time, I remember I'm fully trained, so I was already doing the Indian gimmick.
Yeah.
Al Bold Eagle, Dancing Wolf. He looks at me and he goes, nah, ¿cuál es el nombre tuyo verdadero? What's your real name? And I said, Alexander Santos. He said, no, te voy a poner Pedro. Pedro Santos de Cuamo.
Oh man.
All right. I wanted to get into business, so I got into business.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I was mad at that is because I wanted to do El Papel de Indio, my Indian gimmick, because I had already been doing it in the United States with my cousin Bobby Boldigo. Turns out, el que me cortó las patas, o los que me cortaron las patas,
Mm-hmm.
was the Youngblood brothers. In other words, those were the ones. There's an old saying in Puerto Rico that says "te serruchan el palo." You know what that means?
Yeah.
Okay, they cut your legs from underneath you. They sabotage your your
Your
your your
career.
career. Well, they told Jose, we don't want him to do the Indian gimmick. I had the Indian boots, I had everything. I was gonna go out as Pedro Santos, but with all my stuff in. And he said no. But I still went out with my Indian moccasins. If you look at the old videos, you'll see that I got the Indian boots on. I was really upset, but I figured, well, that's what I'm gonna have to. So, dude, for like a year or two, I was doing nothing but jobs. But I was wrestling Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, Abdullah the Butcher, Scott Hall, who became Razor Ramon. I wrestled all the big names. Kamala, you name it. I was in Ric Flair. I was doing jobs,
Wow.
but I was in the ring with and all those guys really liked me. So one day, this is how I stopped working for Capital Sport Promotions. So one day, I was in the locker room. I was really kind of sad, you know. Chamaquito, I was a young guy, man. I was 17. It's about to, no, at that point, I was 18 and a half, almost going to become 19. I'm in this little locker room because we used to have the shows at a place called El Coliseito de Cataño. It was a gallera, a place where they had
Roosters.
cockfights,
Yep.
rooster fights.
Hmm.
So I was sitting in one of these little rooms because there were little cubicles, and all of a sudden, Tony Atlas walks in. Me and him are still friends to this day. Mr. USA, Black Superman. He sits down. Now I'm gonna tell you the story, but I don't know to this day. I don't know if he was ribbing me or what. We go into the locker room, and he comes into the locker room and he tells me, "Sit down." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." No, sit down Indian style, con las patas cruzadas, with my legs crossed. I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And he takes this because he was a drawer just like me. He used to he draws real good. He takes this paint and he puts his fingers in the paint. Y me hace así. Starts putting paint on my face like this, on the line like that. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden he goes, "You go out there and you be you. Don't let these guys tell you otherwise. Stay right here. I'll be right back." He got up, walked out the door. For some reason, my instinct kicked in because even when I was young, yo siempre fui bien astuto. I was always real thinking ahead. I was a real
Hmm.
smart guy. I rubbed it all off like this, took everything off, me paré, me vestí. Just as I opened the door, I didn't see him coming, but I saw him talking to the young bloods. So I didn't know if he was setting me up para tomarme una foto, un video to make me look stupid. I took all my stuff. That was the last time I worked for WWC. When I went back years later, I went back as Al Farat and nos pusieron los campeonatos y todo. As a matter of fact, when I was still doing the Indian gimmick, there was another company in Puerto Rico in the 90s called AWF, All Star Wrestling Federation.
Right.
I went there with Adolfo as the Sioux War Party. We became tag team champions. We beat Solid Gold. That was Jose Estrada and his son. I forget not Rico Suave, the tall one, who later on went as one of the Boricuas to WWF, but I can't think of his name. But yeah, that's the story of WW. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me in W. When I was putting the ring up,
Hmm.
mano, I was there when they murdered Bruiser Brody. Did I see it? No. But the fact that I was putting up the ring and I saw the commotion, I remember all that, the buzz. All the American wrestlers left the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a
Hulk.
big deal. That was in '87, and I was already starting to train, but I was just, you know, I was still doing mandao errands.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot of stories of Puerto Rico, man. I want to write a book about it, man.
You
I
should.
picked up Rocky Johnson and the Iron Sheik from the airport. I remember that. I'll never forget this. I picked them up at the airport because Victor, not Quinones, Jovica, one of the owners, he tells me, "Hey, I need you to go to the airport and pick up the." He calls me at my house before I left early that morning because we used to do the TV recordings on Wednesdays, every Wednesday. I still have some of the old check stubs of Capital Sports Promotion. Anyway, so I'm like, he told me to go pick them up at the airport at 11 o'clock in the morning and bring them to TV, but to take them to the hotel first because they wanted to get dressed. So I remember hanging up thinking, now what am I going to do? Because I didn't have a car. My dad used to take me, or I would find un vecino que me llevara, to take me over there to the. So my mom tells me, take my car, but I just bought that car. Be very careful. And I go in that car. It was an old car. No prendía.
Oh my God.
So now I'm going crazy thinking, how am I going to do this? So that morning, my dad, again, my hero, he goes to the local airport, Mercedita in Ponce. It was almost brand new, and he rents a car. Listen to this. He rents me a little tiny car back in the day. I don't even think you even heard of this car. It's called a Yugo. He rents a Yugo, little tiny three-cylinder car. He said, "Toma para que vayas al show." So here, so you can go to the show. So I have a car rental, and I'm driving up there by myself. Now, keep in mind, by this time I'm already, 18. I've been jobbing for a while. I get to the airport, and I see Rocky Johnson coming out with a big cigar. That's The Rock's dad, by the way.
Yes.
Big cigar in his mouth, prendido. He was smoking it, and I see the Iron Sheik coming, and the dude has short pants, shirt, and his curl toe boots. This is the first time I've seen curl toe boots in person. So I'm like marking out. I'm a little, I'm young, but I'm like, damn, these guys, I watched them on TV. So I get out of the car, and I tell them, hey, just one thing. I'm trying to act cool.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, you guys can't smoke in this car because this is a car rental. You can't smoke in car rentals. Back then it was like $250 multa.
And that was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot of money. So we get in the car. He takes a cigar and he shuts it off, and he puts it in this tube. I'll never forget. Don't worry. He gets in the front seat. The Iron Sheik gets in the back seat with his boots on. I don't know how he got through the airport like that, but anyway, he's sitting in the back seat, and all of a sudden I see him do this.
Oh.
And I'm freaking out. I look in the rearview mirror like this. I'm like, oh no. So I told Rocky, I said, Rocky, could you tell him, please, I'm going to get in trouble. And Rocky turns around and said, hey, remember, he said no smoking. We're not allowed to smoke any cigarettes or anything in the car. And he goes, it's okay, baby. This is not cigarette. This is marijuana. And he lit up.
Oh my God.
He smoked that doobie all the way to the hotel. And yeah, I got fined $250. My dad was not happy. But later on, Victor Quinones found out what happened. And somehow he convinced Victor Jovica to send me a check. They sent me a check for $250.
Oh.
True story. It was in the mail. I got a check in the mail along with my pay. And people don't believe this, but I was a jobber. And I would go on Wednesdays, and I would do maybe 1, 2, 3 matches in a night, because you had to do a lot of matches because they were trying to get a month worth of TV. Mm-hmm. Or not a month worth, but about 2 weeks worth of TV. And because we only went there like once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. And back then in 87, 88, I was getting a check for $200, $250 a week. Now, if you ask somebody for $300, $200 for a match, they look at you like you're crazy. People wrestle now for free. I don't, but a lot of these wrestlers, bro, they wrestle for free. A veces hasta le pagan al promotor. They pay the promoter to let them wrestle. It's wow. Crazy how it's changed. But anyway, so that was the end of my time in WWC. I've had some very interesting stories to tell about Capital Sports Promotions or Puerto Rico in general.
That is so amazing. It is amazing how all the stuff that you had to go through, the struggles, the grind, but everything's like paying off. Everything's paying off. And to see how you transition, how did the persona of Farat came to be for those people that are watching? I know the story, but for those people that are watching at home or they're gonna listen to, they're probably wonder how the Farat came out. This man came from a Native American persona, and now Pedro Santos, and then now Farat. How the Farat came up to?
Well, that's an interesting story. Remember when I told you that I've always liked the monster bad guys, and my favorite were the Sheiks, like yes. The Iron Sheik, the Sheik, Abdullah the Butcher, the Great Mephisto, Skandar Akbar, Arman Hussein. There was a bunch of them. I got to meet almost all of them. Last one I met was.
By the way, we got cheeses here. Purple Lucha Saiyan 31. Shout out to you, brother. Matthew. Shout out to you as well. I still got some of the question. We'll save it up all the way to the end of the interview, and we'll go over it. But yeah,
I appreciate that. But I got to meet most of
Mhm.
my idols that were those, those Arab style wrestlers.
Oh
The
man.
last one I met was a very famous Adnan Al Kaisi. I got to go to Minneapolis and meet him, and I had breakfast with him, thanks to a buddy of mine named Ken Resnick, who was a very famous interviewer for WWF back in the day. Um, but anyway, so one day I got out of wrestling for a little bit. I was disillusioned because I've always been involved in Native American music.
Mm,
Always. I've always been an
beautiful.
actor, musician, and I tried to, do that along with the wrestling, but wrestling was always the love of my life. But I tried to get into wrestling, and I'm sorry, I tried to get into WWF. This is right before Tatanka debuted. And I remember back in those days, you had to send videotapes with one or two matches. You had to send like a bio, and you had to send pictures, 8x10s. And anyway, so I remember sending it to the WWF headquarters in Connecticut. And dude, I got a letter in the mail signed by James J. Dillon, who at the time was one of the agents for WWF. I don't think they were WWE yet. No, they were still WWF.
WWF. Hmm.
I got a letter. I still have that letter. Titan Towers was or Titan Sports something was a header. And basically saying that, we reviewed your tape, we like your look, blah, 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 blah. But at this time, we're not interested. Months later, Tatanka debuted on WWF TV. So I got out of wrestling. I just me desilusioné.
Hmm.
I was disillusioned. So I got out of wrestling for a little bit, and I decided, well, I'm going to pursue music. And I'm glad I did, because I got to do a lot of big things with music. I mean, a lot of people don't know the movies I've been in stuff, because I never wanted to mix wrestling and my Native American music life. I never wanted to mix them together,
Okay.
which ironically, had I mixed them together,
It would work.
because I had a lot of albums later on, I probably would have got hired as doing my Native American thing in any one of these big companies. But anyway, hindsight is 2020. So I get a letter, and then Tatanka debuts, and I get disillusioned. I get out of wrestling. I focus on music. I accomplish a lot in music, and then I go through a divorce. Now, keep in mind, I was married. My first wife. I go through a divorce. It was a really, really uh,
Tough.
not necessarily a bad divorce, but definitely sad. My
Hmm.
second divorce was bad, but my first one was just sad. But we were young. I met my first wife when I was 15 years old. I got married when I was 17 and a half. Matter of fact, there's a video, a WWC video, the best of Abdullah the Butcher, or Abdullah the Butcher's bloodiest matches. If you look at it, Hugo Savinovich, during my match against Abdullah the Butcher, says, "Oh, Pedro Santos, his wife just, poor thing, he's getting beat up by Abdullah the Butcher, and his wife just had a little baby boy." He says that on the video. You can look it up. It's online. And my son was born as I was getting beat up by Abdullah the Butcher. I don't. It's crazy. I,
Wow.
I was telling I was telling somebody that my wife just had a baby, because I went to a payphone, called home. Anyway, so so I got out of wrestling and started doing music. Fast forward, I go through a divorce, and I decide I want to get away. At the time, I was living in New York. I moved to New York City. I got away from Puerto Rico, moved to New York City, went through a divorce, and I decided to move as far away from New York as possible. So I picked Dallas, Texas. So I moved to Dallas, Texas, but I'm getting bit by the bug again. I'm like, damn, I wonder if there's any wrestling schools.
Hmm.
So I found out that one of my damn mentors, the General Skandar Akbar, otro árabe, had a school on the second floor of, I forget the guy's, it was something gym. Doug's Gym. Doug's Gym in downtown Dallas. So I go down there, I park my car, put it in the meter. Now, I had never met this man before. I go upstairs. There he is, the General Scandal, sitting in his chair. And I'm like, dude, I'm one of your
Wow.
biggest fans. So I told him a little bit about what's going on. I told him that I wrestled in Puerto Rico. And he said, yeah, I was a booker there. He was a booker there. After I had quit wrestling, he booked there. during the 90s. So anyway, so I had let my goatee grow out like this. You'll see, I was always real clean shaven. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Cara de niño. So I walk in there and he goes, "So you do the Indian gimmick?" I said, "Well, yeah, I've been doing that for years, but I kind of want to get away from it." Uh, I I started kind of doing it again. I told him I was, because I had already seen a few promoters in Louisiana and Texas, and I started doing another gimmick. But I changed my name from Pedro Santos or Dancing Wolf or Bold Eagle. I changed it to a name called Coyote, Coyote Santos.
Yes, yes, yes. I remember.
Yeah. Later on, when I trained my students at my school, I named one of my students Coyote. So he got that name from me. I passed it down to him. But anyway, I was already doing some indie shows here and there as Coyote Santos, and he goes, "No, you should be an Arab wrestler." So I said, "Okay." Yeah, I've always wanted to be in it. He didn't know that, but so he told me where to go get my boots, and it was from a famous guy named oh man, I forgot his name. The guy that he made boots for Ric Flair, he made boots for the Von Erich, he made boots for the Iron Sheik. Macias, Clifford Macias, that's his name, Clifford Macias in Houston. So I went down to Clifford Macias, and Clifford made me 2 or 3 pairs of horn boots, and he used the same.
Same.
He one of my boots had blue soles, same blue soles that Ric Flair used on his boots when he wrestled Hardy Race in '85. I kid you not. It said Ric Flair on there. So I got a bunch of boots made by him. I bought the turbans and started, but I still didn't have a name. Well, it at the time I was good friends. Remember, I came up with a lot of the guys that were in ECW. One of those guys was Sabu. So I had become good friends with Sabu's real cousin, the original Sheik's son, Ed Farhat. Me and Ed became real close. He had the original Sheik had two sons that were in the wrestling business, Ed and well, I can't think of the other guy, but anyway. So one day I'm talking to Ed on the phone, and Ed goes, "Well, why don't you use our name?" My jaw dropped.
Wow.
I'm like, "What do you mean your name?" "Go ahead, man." He started calling me cuz. He said, "I'll tell everybody that we're cousins." And I'm like, "I can use Farhat, like the original Sheik Eddie Farhat, your dad?" "Yeah, yeah, you can use it." Holy smokes, man, I was in heaven. So that's so the reason why I kept Al, because Al, I had already used it as Al Bold Eagle, Al Dancing Wolf. It's my real name. Al is
Exactly.
short for Alexander, Alexander Alejandro. Not only that, if you look at a lot of names, a lot of Middle Eastern names have Al with a dash, like Al Habib, Al Jawarma, Al,
Yep.
you know. So I'm
Yep.
like, okay, I'll keep Al. But since I was still young, instead of calling myself the Sheik Al Farhat, I'm going to call myself Prince Al Farhat, and I'm an oil prince. Nobody used Prince before me. I did that before anybody. All these years later, you had Prince Nana, you have Prince David, you had all these princes. Y
Yep.
me quité el nombre de Prince. But that's how it started. Well, I'm at a show that Skandar Akbar booked for Superstars of Wrestling in Tyler, Texas, and Sabu's on the card.
Oh.
And he comes up to me and he goes, "Man, I don't like," I mean, he's cussing up a storm. We almost came to blows. He said, "I don't care what my cousin said. That's my uncle." Because that's really, the Sheik was really his uncle. And Eddie, he's really related to the Sheik. Sabu's mom is the Sheik's sister. But he goes by Brunk. His real name is Terry Brunk, not Terry Farhat. It's Brunk. Long story short, he made a big stink about it, to the point where Akbar comes up to me and goes, "Brother, I love you very much, but he's threatening not to go out if you keep that name and blah, 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 blah." So I said, "Okay, well, drop the H." "What do you mean? Drop the H?" You know? Well, Sabu didn't even want that. He wanted me to completely change. I said, "I'm not changing it." I said, "I'm dropping the H. I'll be Al Farat instead of Al Farhat."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know what happened, but he agreed to it, and that's how Al Farat came by. And then later on, when all these princes started coming up, that's when I decided to change it to just Al Farat. And then my buddy, after I had the school and I trained all these different, because I trained like 25 people, um, it was one of my students that said, you've been in the business a long time, since '85. So, you're a legend. I never looked at myself as a legend, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to, I felt kind of funny about that. And he said, you should be called the Arab legend. Nobody uses that. The Arab legend Al Farad. So I really didn't want to, but then a promoter named Matt Riviera books me in a match against Hacksaw Jim Duggan for TCW Wrestling, Traditional Championship Wrestling. He starts
Wow.
booking me against Hacksaw, Honky Tonk Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, Jerry the King Lawler, and all the matches said Legends match. And I'm like, dude, I'm not a legend. Everybody, all my students, yeah, you are. Matt Riviera, I helped break him into the business. Yes, you are. You've been doing it a long time. We're going to call you the
Mm-hmm.
Arab legend. So that's how the Arab legend Al Farad was born.
It's well due, and it fit in perfectly for you, even though cause you didn't see or you don't see yourself as one, but you went to the transition for the territories to the '90s, but you were from the golden era, basically. Even though it wasn't easy, it's not like how wrestling is today. It's crazy how wrestling has changed. Now you're doing a lot of high flyers, a lot of super kicks, a lot of stuff. You didn't see that back in the day. Back in the day, it was more like a slow cook. The transition, the grapple hold, and the facial expression, every detail. Like I love that. I love that about wrestling. I love your matches. I've seen you a couple of matches of yours, um, and I love how the what makes wrestling. Basically, that's what makes wrestling, and for you to transmit and transfer your wisdom to new talents, to know about the industry, about wrestling itself. Um, and a lot of people, you teach a lot of people, and you have you used to give school wrestling. You used to give wrestling classes, or what was that? Back a couple years within your second wife, I believe, during that time. So yeah, that's freaking amazing. Those people that what kind of people you were training with? You mentioned a couple of names, Bubba Dudley, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer. Um, what type of opponent do you had whenever you were like, who was your arch enemy when it comes to wrestling as itself? Like, who was you like you found it that you guys had a great chemistry, and you guys were like dancing within the wrestling match. Uh, who do you find it that it was that you enjoy yourself wrestling with?
Well, that's kind of a hard question to answer because there've been so many. And none of those guys that you mentioned and that I mentioned, I didn't train any of them. I just trained with them. If
Exactly.
anything, they
Yeah.
helped train me. They helped me, and we came up together, me and Tommy Dreamer. I didn't train. The only ones I really trained or started training were the headhunters, and I trained some other guys throughout the years in Louisiana. I trained a few guys here in Oklahoma,
Yeah,
but
that's what I meant. Sorry.
yeah, but as far as my, I have favorites, and then I have guys that, like, my favorite matches were against, when I first started making a name for myself. They were giving me a little bit of push. My favorite matches was a guy named the Super Black Ninja, who later on became the Great Muda. Legend, absolute legend. And I can't believe how legendary he is now, because back in the
Wow.
day we were just running the roads together. But I've had a lot of good matches against guys like Eric Embry. You have to understand, you're right. You hit it on the head. Back in the old days, it wasn't like it is now where it's a lot of high flying. Hell, I
Mm-hmm.
was considered a high flyer when younger, but I didn't do the high spots that they do now. But those are some of my favorite matches. And later on, I got to wrestle uh, in the IWCCW against some guys like Gino Caruso and, again, Tommy Dreamer. But I've had long feuds, fun feuds with people like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Tim Storm, I've wrestled him so many
Man,
times. Matter of fact, I'm wrestling him again on July 27th. Every time we get together, we don't even talk about our match. We're like, same thing. So yeah, there was a few, and then growing up, there was a guy named William El Dragon. Man, I had some incredible man. He was like a Ricky Steamboat back in the day. Um, I had matches against the Headhunters when I first, when I finished training them. I had matches. Some of my most memorable ones though were in England. My cousin took me to England to wrestle for a company called Joint Promotions.
okay.
It was owned by a fellow by the name of Max Crabtree, and his star was the star of his company was his brother, who was Big Daddy. And Big Daddy, there was a lot of guys like Big Daddy, uh, the Black Angus, Mark Rollerball, Rocco. Dude, there was those guys were you talk about some class. I had some classics out there. Me and my cousin wrestling against a lot of those guys, and all those matches were 2 out of 3 falls, just like in Mexico. Um, I got to wrestle for a few indie companies in Mexico, but I actually got to wrestle at the one of the very first When Worlds Collide. That was when AAA came to the United States and had shows in Madison Square Garden, San
Yeah.
Diego. They hit all the major cities. I got a call from a promoter named Mitch Stein. What was his name? Mitch. Oh man, I can't Steinberg or something like that.
Mm.
He was a promoter of IWA, no relation to the IWA in Puerto Rico. It's just another IWA. And I got a call one day saying that they needed guys for the AAA show in Madison Square Garden, and I thought it was a rib. I
Mm.
said, "No, you don't." I thought to myself, but he gave me an address to an office in Manhattan, and I went. When I get to the office, I see a buddy of mine that I actually wrestled many times, and his name was not El Bronco. It'll come to me. But
Yeah.
anyway, I see my buddy there, and all of a sudden he's like, "Yeah, they called me too. Me and you are gonna tag." So we signed some contracts. I never, I'd never seen a wrestling contract in my life. So I signed it. Oh, El Bandido, that's his name, El Bandido. So we signed a contract. The show is like a week later. We're going to Madison Square Garden. We park. They take us to these rooms. We get dressed. We're first match. They bring in our opponents, and it was Diamond Dallas Page and the late Luis Piccoli against me and El Bandido. I was still
Wow.
doing the Indian gimmick,
Man.
and we walk out to the ring. We were the first match. We walk out to the ring, and I look around and I see 20,000 people. It's the first time I was like, holy smokes! I cannot believe we're here. There's a poster of that somewhere online as well. I wish I can get a poster of it. But anyway, um, so it turns out years later, El Bandido had a son named Bandido Jr., who wrestled for a little bit, and now is currently one of the main referees for WWE. He's current right now in WWE, Bandido Jr., but I can't. He's the Puerto Rican referee, but I can't think of his name.
Wow. That's
He's
amazing.
he's an actual referee for WWE. But yeah, me and his dad tagged against Luis Piccoli and Diamond Dallas Page for AAA. From there, I did my only one show that I did for ECW when they were still Eastern Championship Wrestling in Queens. It wasn't owned by I forgot the name of the guy who owned it. Todd Gordon, I think it is.
It should
Yeah,
be.
I did I did one show, but I didn't like I for some reason I just didn't go back. And at the time I was wrestling for him and another guy named Tommy D, who used to run shows with Todd Gordon and them, and also separate. They used to use each other's talent. I wish I would have known how big ECW would have gotten, because my partner stayed with them and later on became Dances with Dudley.
That's amazing. That's pretty amazing. But tell us more. Like, I know even before you became the prince, during that transition, your passion and love with music. Because I want people to get to know you. I wanted to know that you are a legend in wrestling. You love wrestling. Wrestling is basically the air that you breathe. But there's another love that you have, which is music. Can you tell us more about your music?
Well, before I do that, I want to transition into that. But man, I didn't share with you, man. I got brand new
Oh,
Al Farat ball caps for female and for males. Check that out.
oh,
I
that's.
got those. I gotta do a cheap plug because I might as well since I'm on. Check
Mm-hmm.
out the new shirts, all available on my Facebook page. All you gotta do is hit me up.
Guys,
And a
yep.
and a big shout out to my company, the one I work for now. As you can see, I'm the current. Let's see if I can see that. The current CCW heavyweight champion, and I'm also the current self-proclaimed Middle Eastern heavyweight champion. I just had to give you that cheap plug.
Yeah, amazing. No, I love it. We want that more, and we're gonna make sure we drop the link of Facebook, so you guys are able to. If you want a merchandise from the Arab legend Al Farad, make sure to hit him up on Facebook. The link will be down in the description down below. Send him a message, a DM. He will definitely let you know everything that you need to know to get some merch. And I'm gonna be rocking those merch, and I'm gonna be one of them wearing the merch as well. So you
I
guys will
I
see me.
appreciate that, man. I got them from small all the way to 4X, and I even have slam buddies. I don't know if you know what those are. They look like the pillows that but they're
Yes.
outline of the wrestlers. I have a few of those left over. But you can see the slam buddies on my Facebook page. But yeah, so all my life I've been involved in my culture, my Native American culture, and I've been a musician and a dancer and I was very fortunate to have been able to use this music. A lot of people don't know this, but I have 11 albums on the market, music albums. I'm actually the lead
Wow.
singer.
Wow.
I'm actually a singer. But dude, I've dabbled in opera. I did opera off Broadway in New York for like a year. Uh, I've acted in several different commercials, Japanese commercials. I've been all around the world. I've taken about 7 trips all around the world. I've been to many, many different countries. I've been to almost every state in the United States. And yet I still can't bring myself. I don't know. I just feel funny when I say, well, I'm a legend. I appreciate that people like you and other people, I guess, appreciate my work. And now that I'm getting older, you don't know how much it means to me, Angel, that people see me this way. You know, it's very humbling. And it just makes me emotional because, I would have never thought in a million years that I would have done all these things. I was inducted in 3 halls of fame. I'm in the NWA Amarillo Hall of Fame. I'm in the
Wow.
class that inducted Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, and me. Who would have thought that? I'm inducted in the Southern States Hall of Fame. David Fuller has a company, and it's recognized as the Southern States Hall of Fame from all the way from Texas to Florida. I'm in their Hall of Fame. I'm in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. The guy, his name was Cowboy uh, Johnny Mantell. I don't think he runs it anymore, but he had a museum in the Hall of Fame in Wichita Falls, Texas. So he tells me, "Hey Al, I want a pair of your wrestling boots, the ones with the horns." I was already doing the Arab Legend, and I said, "Okay." So he said, "Next time you're in Wichita Falls, bring me your boots. I want a turban, a robe, everything." And I'm thinking to myself, "What do you want all this for?" So I go down there, and he says, "Can you loan it?" Because museums, you can only put stuff on loan because if something happens to you, they have to give it back to your family or whatever,
Right.
unless they buy it outright. So I give him this stuff. We just want to exhibit it for, put it on exhibition. So when I go back down there 6 months later to see it, they had a mannequin with all my stuff, my boots on, and then there's a company, there was a producer that did. It's called the Texas Road Stories or something. I forget what it's called, but they showcase local Texas like barbecue. cowboy boots, Texas country music, country, like stuff like that. Well, they showcased the Hall of Fame in Texas, and that's one of the things they showed on there. And it just so happens I was there that day, so the guy goes, "Can I interview you?" You can find it. I forget. It's on my my Facebook page. But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how everything happened. But back to my music. So I started doing music and recorded 11 albums. My newest album just came out last year, and 2 albums were nominated for the Grammy Awards. I was shocked because the Grammy Awards has a division called World Music.
Yes.
That's where they nominate música latina, música regional, regional.
Oh, he'll be right back, guys. That's amazing. This man right here was able to find music regional three music. Wow, like the Grammys. Hold on, that is amazing. By the way, guys, if you guys have any questions for him, please write your questions. That way, once he comes back, we will be able to ask every single question, answer the questions, and go from there. But what a story! This is a banger, legit a banger. I cannot believe all this stuff that has happened and could cure on his life. All right, here we go. We got him right here, guys. We're gonna continue.
So anyway, yeah, we got nominated for the Grammy Awards. They asked me to be part of the soundtrack for Mission Impossible, the one with Tom Cruise, the first one. Man, I've done so much. And then I get a call about 3 years ago. I get a call from a lady named Mary Margaret. She said, "I'm with Disney, Marvel Disney, or Disney Marvel." Of course, I thought it was, again, I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. She goes, "No, seriously, Pichon Bread." And when she mentioned Pichon Bread, I said, "Wait, that's my niece, Yeah, she recommended. My niece is like a real big deal in the movie industry. She recommended you and your band, your group Otter Trail, OTTER, like the animal otter trail, como camino, Otter Trail. She recommended you guys for the movie, for the show Echo, which is a Marvel show. So can you believe that I'm part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU? I'm in the credits and everything. I couldn't believe it. So they asked me to go there, and they only asked me to compose the Native American music for it. I'm a composer, so I did. I composed some songs, and then when I get there to sing the songs into a studio, because they were gonna dub it into the movie, she goes, no, we want you to be in the movie. So I play a background part, like they put a big chief headdress on me. You can see me in the back. But then they have a nice shot of me singing on the drum, a close-up with me and my cowboy hat in episode 5. Me and my wife were in it. And then a year later, Apple Films calls me and says they're producing a movie called, matter of fact, tomorrow is the premiere. I don't know if you saw me, I posted it on my Facebook page. So Apple Films, who are the same people who just put the movie out called Killers of the Flower Moon with Robert freaking De Niro. And his co-star was Lily Gladstone. She's a new actress, but she's blowing up right now. Well, she's in this movie too, with me. And Apple Films says, well, we want you to produce the music and be in your group to be in the, and they're just small parts, but still, that's because we're singing in there, we're considered speaking actors. So when I get there, I'm thinking I'm going to be paid $300, because they were paying $300 to all background actors, but those are non-speaking roles, like extras, Mm-hmm. The producer comes up to me and says, well, you're composing songs and you're singing on the screen, so you're considered those are considered speaking roles. So they give me a contract that says SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And all of a sudden, I could not believe it. $3,500 a week on top of the $320 per day. I was like shocked. I couldn't believe it. Same thing in the credits. So, man, God has been so good to me. I can't even begin to tell you how good God has been to me. I give him all the praise and glory, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I am today. And you know, a lot of people don't like to hear stuff like that. When they see Al Farad, they're like, Al Farad, you're a Christian? That's just a role I play. We're all actors in professional wrestling. But in reality, my faith in the Lord is very, very strong. And I really believe that everything that I've accomplished is because I have put him first. I have laid all my issues and all my troubles and all my ills at his feet. You know, and me and my wife we pray before we go on these things. And, you know, and I don't mean to get Christian on you, but...
No, I love it. I love it, because on my life right now, I'm on that process of learning to put God first in all my problems.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
He's been so good to me so far. And I'm surprised that I should have done that a long time ago. And it's never too late. So...
Well, let me tell you, I've never been into drugs. I've never been into alcohol. I don't even smoke cigarettes. I like cigars, you know, but I've never been in any of that stuff. I was always just a good person, you know, raised my kids, even though I went through a divorce twice. My older kids, I'm talking my 35-year-old, my 32-year-old, they all still live close to me. You know, I always wanted to be that good father, that present father. And, but really, I taught my kids the same way. We pray together. You know, he says that when two or more gather in his name, there he is in the midst. You know, so I always made sure that I gave him all the praise and glory. I wasn't very good about doing that when I was younger, but I also wasn't involved in drugs and alcohol. I was never that person. But I had a hard upbringing. I definitely had a hard upbringing. You know, there was a lot of abuse in the family, and you know, stuff that happens. You know, but I'm so thankful of where I am right now, and that's pretty much what's gotten me to my point now. Now, how ironic that now that I'm older, all these things I'm doing in music is starting to cross over into wrestling. Every promoter that calls me says, dude, I saw you on Echo, or wait till the movie comes out in the theaters this week.
Can't wait. I can't wait. I'm so gonna
Yo te estoy dando la primicia, papi. You're the first one. You're the first one that's actually interviewing me right when the movie comes out in the theater. So, but I told my wife, let's stay humble, you know, but these promoters are calling me saying, dude, you got to go back to being Al Santos or do the Indian thing again. And I'm like, I mean, I could still be Al Farad. I kind of, you know, people know that it's a work. You know, people know that wrestling's just a show. But eventually I'll probably figure out a way how to...
Oh, I have a couple ideas. I was thinking
transition back, you know?
Yeah, I got a couple ideas of how we'll discuss it later on. But, wow, that is amazing how good God is. That's amazing and how he's blessing you. All the rewards. I cannot wait. I want to watch it. I want to watch the premiere. Definitely very excited for you, Farad. What's next for you?
Well, funny you should ask me that, because the one thing that I've never been able to do, that I've always wanted to do, is I have always wanted to make a mark with where I started. I've always wanted to make a mark amongst my fellow Boricuas. If you notice, I went to Puerto Rico several times, but I never stayed long. Nunca hice una campaña grande. I never really, you know, where it matters, where it made sense, where the people remember. Like, the people that remember me from short little stints that I did in Puerto Rico. But there's promoters in Florida, for example, and there's a promoter in Georgia and another one in New York that all they do is bring guys from Puerto Rico, de la vieja guardia, Ray Gonzalez, El Invader. They run shows, and I've contacted them, not recently, like 3-4 years ago. Algunos se acuerdan de mí. Some of them remember, but most of them like, oh, okay. But they didn't book me. How funny. Now there's a few guys. There's a guy named Welby. He runs in You know who he is?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he runs in North Carolina and Georgia and that whole area. He just hit me up the other day. He goes, "People, te vi en el show." He said, so he wants to bring me back. He wants to bring me in. So he wants to call me this week so we can talk. And I said, dude, because they're all asking me, well, you're probably a lot of money. I said, bro, you fly me in and give me what you think what you think you deserve. I'm not gonna superstar you, because I want to make a mark with that audience, because one day I want to go back and buy a house in Puerto Rico and be able to retire, and I'm still young enough where I can go do all these things. So, and my dad is still alive, my mom is still alive. So I tell these promoters in Florida, bring me in, man. My mom lives in Orlando. Por lo menos puedo ir a verla, hang out with her and stuff. So that's what I want to do. What's next? I want to try to get myself booked on the wrestling circuit with these promoters in Florida, on the island of Puerto Rico. I want to go back to Mexico. I want to that Latin American market. Now, my nephew, I don't know if you know this, but I have a nephew named Akbar Farat. That's my actual nephew. He went to Mexico and he's doing really good right now. Matter of fact, I manage him and another guy named Frank Stone. That's the picture that you put up, the TSW. That's my actual legit nephew. So, la mamá de él es mi prima hermana. So he's doing a lot of big things, and he's like, but he wants me to get involved, like more physical. He's like, mano, todavía a ti te queda, and I'm like, bro, I'm 55, I can't. He wants me to put the boots back on and get, start, see if I can. And I probably do have another run left in me, but I want to focus on, in other words, quality over quantity. I don't want to get back on the road and wrestle all these independent shows, for a hot dog and a handshake. No, sir. It's got to mean something. Because now, if you notice, Angel, yo no te lucho 50 veces al año por 50 pesos. In other words, I don't wrestle 50 times a year for $50 a shot. I wrestle maybe once or twice a year and I get what I want. And the 1, 2, 3 times I wrestle a year, it always makes a wave. People are like, oh shit, Al made a I post it, and because everybody knows me in the music industry, it's shared all throughout. Y eso, que I don't know that much about internet. If I had somebody that would run me like my Instagram account, I get on there maybe once every 3 weeks, because I don't know a whole lot about that. But I got guys telling me, man, you need a X, whatever that is. You need Twitter. You need this. You need that. Let me if I had somebody that could promote it that way, shoot, I probably would get a whole bunch of bookings. But again, my music keeps me very, very, very busy. So that's what's next for Al Farat. I wanna enjoy the last lo que me queda. The last
yes, have fun.
4 or 5. Yeah,
be
I'm 55. I'm 55. If I could retire at 60 from in-ring competition, but keep managing till I want to manage till I'm 70, 75. But if I can make these last 5, 6, 7 years matter, then that's what's important to me. So getting bookings in Florida so I can spend some time with my mom, going back to the island so I can spend some time with my dad. Now, as far as music, dude, I got so many projects. It's ridiculous. And I feel bad because the wrestling fans, they really don't care about all that, but I still share it because some of them surprisingly do care,
Yeah, definitely. And like myself, I care.
Yeah, really exactly. And I appreciate that. I really do.
We got a current champion, man. You a legit champion. You got 2 belts with you. Yeah. And this is amazing. I'm still surprised. We're gonna go one of the questions that pretty much I was like, okay, that's a good question. Precious Sprouse saying great interview so far. I have a question. What are your thoughts on this era of wrestling compared to where you were in wrestling?
Well, I'm probably gonna shock a lot of people because I have a different approach. If you notice, all the wrestlers de la vieja guardia, In English, that's old school. All the old school wrestlers, almost uniform across the board, almost all of them think the same way. I don't think the same way. They're always talking about, they're always shitting on the product, on the new
Right.
product. This is how I see professional wrestling. If you take professional wrestling from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and you compare it to wrestling in the 70s and 80s, night and day.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s and 80s, we were saying, we were being talked about by those guys who wrestled in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. They would call us a bunch of monkeys jumping around, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Keep it in the ring, don't hit the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
So everything evolves, evolution. There's nothing wrong with that. So a lot of guys from my era have a bad habit of shitting on the new guys. I had all that jumping around, all that high flying stuff. Now, do I enjoy watching wrestling nowadays? The matches?
Mm-hmm.
Of course I don't enjoy it as much as I did from my era.
Right.
Believe it or not, when I watch Raw or AEW or I watch, TNA, I enjoy the promos in the ring and the backstage vignettes more than I do the inside.
To the rest.
I mean, I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, these damn guys hitting 6,000 power drivers and all these kickouts. Back in my day, that was a finish. Listen, everything evolves, man. Everything evolves. So more power to these young guys. I mean, think about it. If wrestling was the shits, it wouldn't be the most popular thing that it is. Wrestling has never been more popular than it is now. Think about that. I mean, wrestling wasn't mainstream. You didn't see wrestling on 7 days a week. You watch. There's so much wrestling on TV right now. It's ridiculous. Now, if you were to ask me, would I rather watch Monday Night Raw or watch Billy Corgan's NWA? Of course, I'm going to say I'd rather watch NWA because it's more familiar to what I grew up with. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, these young guys, they're just spot monkeys. No, I'm not going to say that because, that's unfortunately everything evolves. Professional wrestling is not any different. Is there a place for all these different styles in wrestling? Yes. There are people that like the old school. There are people that like Mexican style lucha libre. There are people that like European catch as catch can. There's Japanese style. There's room for all of us in there. And if you have a wrestling card that has all that, that's awesome. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. Now, if you go completely old school, I think that would be suicide. A company that went completely old school. Yeah. And what I mean by suicide, I don't mean you'll probably always exist, but you'll never break into mainstream because the people nowadays are not into that. They're used to watching what they watch on TV, WWE. See?
I 100% agree with you. And something that I'm very concerned is the risk of the wrestler. So if you do something that really jeopardizes your life or your colleague peer, your working peer, then there's something that you need to work on, change things up, and don't risk your life over a move. You know what I mean?
Well, let me touch on that real quick because that's very important. Somebody asked me that in another podcast about a year and a half ago. Will Riggs, he has a podcast, and he asked me about that. What my thought about that, and this is how I look at it. Back when I was growing up, when I broke into business in the 70s and 80s, you had all these casualties. A lot of wrestlers died. Think about that. A lot of wrestlers, Gino Hernandez. I can go on and on. Buddy Landell. What do they all have in common, Angel? That they all died because of drugs. I mean, look at Jake the Snake Roberts' story, for example. Yeah. These old guys from that era, murieron de droga or overdoses. That was the type of lifestyle that they had back in those days. That was the cause of why wrestlers were dying in the 70s and 80s and even into the early 90s. Mid 90s, all the way into the early 2000s, They were dying of things that were not controlled by the state athletic commission or the companies. There were, if you notice, now there's drug tests. You can't hit people with chairs. In the 90s, early 2000s, they were dying of concussions, like Benoit, for example, just to give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. And in other words, the reason why these wrestlers get hurt and die has changed throughout the decades. You follow
Yes.
me?
Yes. Definitely. Definitely.
Back, back, back in so then in the 90s and early 2000s, it was concussions because they worked them to death and there was no había seguro, there was no type of medical benefit. Now, fast forward. Now they're shortening their lives by doing what old timers might consider stupid shit. Like, let me give you, I'm trying to give you one. Okay, El Hijo del Vikingo. You know who that is?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Definitely.
that's a perfect
Great wrestler.
example.
Mm-hmm.
That's a what's killing wrestlers, not so much like killing them as in their life being ended, but their careers ending early or
Quick.
even possibly dying. What's killing them instead of the concussions or the drugs from earlier, what's killing them is all the stupid things they have to do in the ring.
Yes.
If you see some of the spots they do, it's so incredibly dangerous
It's scary.
that no wonder they're, by the time they're 40, they're and trust me when I tell you, people say, oh, it's just a matter of time when they pull a knife or shoot somebody I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been in the locker room and wrestlers have told me, wrestlers of today, los chamaquitos de hoy, they want to do some type of angle where they kill each other in the ring. It's scary.
Scary. That
So
is scary. Wow.
so you see how every generation had their own wrestlers dying, but whatever they died of, whatever was popular at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, 90s, cocaine. 90s and the 2000s, it was, they had no protection, so they were
No
using,
medical.
in other words, the 90s and the 2000s, basically they had the Attitude Era, ECW. They were doing that kind of crazy stuff. Now, so I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, sometimes I watch these matches and I cringe. I'm like, oh, God, I can't watch that.
Yeah, I'm the same way because you want to last. You basically want to last. You want to endure. You want to be there for a long time, and you basically don't want to jeopardize your fellow. And you don't want to jeopardize your fellow colleague that you work with, and you don't want to like break his arm or God forbid you end up dead or that person end up dead, because when you're wrestling you have it's your responsibility of that person's safety. That's why they got wrestling school, how to make drops, how to do suplex, how to do every single move that there is today. But it's kind of scary. It's very scary of how things are happening lately. We El Hijo del Vikingo and all the wrestlers like the Young Bucks, and they do high flying and stuff like that. It's kind of scary and crazy. And it's surprising how wrestling has been evolving throughout the years, throughout the era. Um, it's amazing. If you guys are watching, keep in mind we're gonna put the description down below of Al Farat merchandise. There we go. We got you, boss man. We are back. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, it is amazing how wrestling evolves and how everything's changed. Great question. By the way, that's my beautiful wife that asked the question. I love you for your support. But yeah, that is amazing, dude. It's a blessing to have you here. It's a blessing of get some wisdom of the experience of your life, of all the struggle and how God is being so great and so good that He's still blessing it. And the blessing that we didn't think that we are gonna get out of nowhere, just out of the blue, you get many blessings and more. Guys, make sure to follow him on Facebook. We're gonna put the description down below. His merchandise are amazing, so make sure to DM. You gotta get those merchandise, guys. We gotta keep moving forward. Are you managing currently, Alfarat?
Yeah. I'm managing a new team called Devastation Reborn, which reborn because it's the rebirth of Devastation Incorporated from back in the world class era. General Skandar Akbar, that was his group, his entourage, and his gang, and I was one of the last people he managed before he passed away. So I was very lucky that he gave me the opportunity to use and the permission to use that name. So in honor of him, we started Devastation Reborn, and you can catch us on TSW Wrestling. That's Texas Style Wrestling, which I don't know if I'm at liberty.
Oh, hold on. He'll be right back, guys. So I do apologize for that. It's internet issues. It's not a big deal. But what? I'm surprised, guys. Again, his Facebook will be posted on the description down below. Make sure to follow him, subscribe to his page. Asking any questions that you guys would love to ask him any questions. He got shirts, he got caps. Not only that, but he was on Marvel Echo. He's premiering a new movie on Apple. If you want to know more information about the movie that he's part of or he's premiering on, it's on his Facebook, guys. So make sure to follow him. Guys, this guy is amazing. I'm still in disbelief of all the stuff that he had to go through stage of his life. One of my dreams was to become a wrestler. It just did not happen because I'm already old, so it's too late for me at this stage of time for me to become a wrestler and pay my dues and sacrifice time. You know what I mean? But it's amazing to hear from Farat. Yeah, you were saying?
I said I really appreciate you having me on, man. I had a blast. So
No, it's good to have you here. It's good to see you on a video, not just on podcasts or just hearing you through images, but to actually see the real you and to know the man exactly the core of you. So thank you for giving us the blessing of this platform. Guys, we're gonna share this everywhere on Facebook, in all social medias, guys. So do me the favor to make clips and share it. We're gonna tag Busted Open, where actually Bubba Ray Dudley is doing podcast, so maybe he able to see you and be like, oh, bring some memories. Or which he was a friend of yours that trained with you alongside during those times. But it's good, amazing to hear your story, and your story is not finished, just beginning.
I remember. Speaking of Bubba Ray, we were never close. I was never like really close with all those guys. Probably Tommy Dreamer is the one I really spoke to the most. But Bubba Ray, and I know he doesn't know this because he went on to become one of the most decorated tag team champions of all time. In my opinion, the best tag team that's ever lived. In my opinion, the Dudley Boys. And I'm not saying that because I know him, but they were pretty impressive. But Bubba Ray doesn't know this, or maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he remembers. But in Gleason's gym, me and him actually, he actually like took me in the ring, and I don't know if I'm older than him or he's older than me because I think I'm older than a lot of those guys because they're all like 51, 52, 53. I'm 55. But Bubba Ray helped me a lot. We were at Gleason's gym by ourselves. It was just me and him, and we were in the ring, and he said, "Come on, man, let's work out." And me and Bubba Ray went at it for like, I kid you not, we must have been in there for 30 minutes, and I never forgot that the help that he. I guess he was trying to toughen me up. I don't know what he was trying to do, but man, he actually we worked together in the ring, and I had been doing it a little bit longer than he had, but I always appreciated that about him, and he was still Mongo Vile. He never got to be as big as, he wasn't as big as he is now. But I always remember him training with me, and I never forgot that, man. Absolutely never. So hope if he's watching this, if you're ever watching this, Bubba, man, my respect towards you, man. Really, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. One last question that I have for you, and with that we're gonna end the stream. And the question is, what advice can you give to the upcoming people that are training to become a wrestler? What advice can you give them that they could take so through their journeys they could succeed in life?
Well, The first thing I want to say is stay away from all the vices. There's a lot of vices out there. Um, Keep your head in the grind. Market yourself. I don't care how good you are in the ring. I don't care how many crazy bumps you take. If you're not a good talker and you don't market yourself as a good talker, you're never going to make it in this business. Because unfortunately, we're actors. That's what we are. We're creating movies. We're creating shows. When you're in the ring, you're telling a story. You're putting together a movie. You know, a story for the people to follow or not follow. And whether they follow or not follow is solely dependent upon you and only you. So the better talker you are, the more you invest in your brand, because you're a brand. So the more you invest in it, not only just merchandise, but merch is important. And I'm talking about all aspects of merch, from ball caps to t-shirts to, I don't care if, you know, lanyards, whatever you can make, dolls, uh, market yourself, because this wrestling business is more saturated today than it has ever been. Think about that. Back in when I was growing up, there were no wrestling schools. There was no such thing as a wrestling school. You know, that you might have had one here and there, but really in the 70s, you know, it was very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might have had a ring in the back like Vern Gagne did in the AWA up there, and so on and so forth. But really, there weren't. Now you got 2, 3 wrestling schools in the same city sometimes. So you're competing against thousands of other people that want, just like you, to be a professional wrestler. And there's not a lot of money in it, you know, not like when I was coming up. You know, back in the 80s, wrestlers made stupid amount of money. Not anymore. In order to make money, you have to cross over and use your wrestling ability to cross over into other genres. Remember, merch, promotion, promotion, promotion. And if you can do other things to catapult your wrestling. Back in the old days, you used to use wrestling to become an actor. Now it's the other way around. In order to make it in professional wrestling, if you have another love that's just as popular, then try to become some. For example, let me give you an example. What's over nowadays? Well, what's over is these influencers, these TikTokers, like your current United States champion. Him and his brother are huge. You know where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a musician, try to promote yourself as much as possible, because promoters are going to be like, guess what they're going to use? They're going to use your music career, your acting career, or your whatever it is, to try to promote you in professional wrestling. Why? Because they're trying to capture audiences from other genres to watch wrestling. So they're gonna say, oh, he was in a few movies and blah blah blah. Come check him out. He's wrestling in our company. So remember to market yourself. Remember that you're a brand, and because you're a brand, try to stay drug free, alcohol free, because there's kids watching. You know, I preach to anybody. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, definitely.
if you poison your body with these things, you shorten your career. That's
Yes.
just the way it is. Try not to do any of those crazy bumps. Unfortunately, that's what's over nowadays. Or if you're young, you probably are going to do all these bumps. But if you can try not to and try to be a smart worker, I always tell people, and you can put this to the test. Mention all the top wrestlers in the business. And when I mean top, I'm talking about iconic. Okay? Flair,
Mm-hmm.
Hogan, Cena. I'm just giving you a few of them now. All those guys, what do they all have in common? They weren't the best workers in the ring, but they were the best talkers. Flair didn't have a whole lot of moves. Hulk Hogan didn't have a whole lot of moves.
Oh, we lost him for there. He's talking about Ric Flair, Cena. They weren't great wrestlers, but they were great promoters. They were great talented on the mic. It's all about promotions, promotion, like you said, and marketing. That's very interesting. I didn't see it that way. And the other fact that he mentioned, that the talent that you are well known of the platform that you're well known, to they want to use that those viewers, they want to bring it to wrestling, which is a smart marketing system, if you may add. That's a very interesting point of view, Farat. You are a truly a legend, and I'm very blessed to have you here on the stream. Um, all right, here we go. There we go, brother. All righty. But they were great at the mics. They were great at promos, I believe.
Yeah. Be the greatest showman that you can be, the greatest actor. That comes first. Performer. And then the rest will come after that.
So, guys, thank you for watching the stream. We're gonna do YouTube Shorts. We're gonna clip it. We're gonna be all over the place. So, thank you all for to having me, to having this honor to have you on this format. I appreciate it. I cannot wait to see what more you gonna bring out of your hat. So, thank you once again. Thank you guys for watching the stream. And guys, we'll see what's gonna happen next for the legend of Farat. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next stream.